Good evening, dear listeners, and a very warm welcome to you all. Wherever you are tuning in from tonight, maybe cozied up in bed, listening from your favourite quiet corner at home, or perhaps relaxing somewhere peaceful, with the world fading away outside, I'm so glad you've joined me here. Take a slow, deep breath, let your shoulders drop, maybe pull the covers up a bit higher, and feel the day gently slip away. Let the story begin. Ashford Hall was the perfect stage for tragedy. Elegant, refined, every guest playing their role in the grand drama of inheritance. Then the Marquess Reginald Ashford was found dead in his locked study. A glass of brandy beside his cold hand, the faint almond scent of poison on the air. The police saw suicide born of despair over his long-missing heir. But Hercule Poirot saw a performance, and someone in this theatre of wealth was playing the role of innocent, the role of murderer. The curtain rises. Chapter 1. The stage is set. The drawing-room of Ashford Hall shimmered under the soft glow of crystal chandeliers that tinkled delicately with every faint draught from the tall French windows. Polished mahogany tables caught the warm reflection of flames dancing in the marble fireplace, while the sweet scent of hothouse lilies mingled with expensive sandalwood cologne and the lingering trace of fine Cuban cigar smoke that clung to the heavy velvet curtains. Outside, the chill night air pressed coldly against the glass panes, but inside the warm drawing-room, the atmosphere felt thick with unspoken expectation and carefully rehearsed elegance. Hercule Poirot had arrived that very afternoon at the personal invitation of the Marquess Reginald Ashford. The little Belgian detective moved with deliberate grace, arranging a pair of silver candlesticks into perfect symmetry on a side table. His small hands worked with precision, as though even the placement of objects must follow order and method. He had not come merely as a guest for the weekend. The Marquess had summoned him specifically to witness the dramatic announcement. The long-lost grandson and rightful heir had finally returned. The stage, Poirot reflected with a thoughtful touch to his magnificent moustache, was exquisitely prepared for what promised to be a most interesting performance. The cast of characters had already taken their places with the natural grace of seasoned actors. Lady Violet Ashford, the Marquess's elegant second wife, glided through the room in a flowing silk evening gown that rustled softly against the parquet floor. She played the role of gracious hostess with every smile and gesture, her perfume a delicate cloud of Chanel that followed her movements. Lord Cedric Ashford, the nephew and presumed heir until this sudden development, stood tall and composed near the fireplace. His rough tweed jacket carried the faint scent of the stables, yet his posture suggested the steady confidence of a man who believed the fortune still belonged to him. Miss Beatrice Langford, the young niece, offered a bright, somewhat nervous laugh as she accepted a glass of champagne from smooth crystal. Her travelling suit of rough tweed contrasted sharply with the Art Deco luxury surrounding her. Mr. Harold Voss, the family solicitor, had sipped his drink with professional calm, the leather of his briefcase resting nearby and giving off a rich, polished scent. Dr. Julian Marsh, the trusted family physician, hovered helpfully near the older guests, his own sandalwood cologne cutting through the warmer notes of wood smoke from the fire. Then there was the mysterious newcomer, Captain Philip Drayton. The missing heir returned at last. He sat quietly in a high-backed chair, still wearing his soft kid gloves, as though he might depart at any moment. A faint trace of leather and distant travel clung to him. The evening unfolded with the smooth rhythm of a well-rehearsed first act. The grandfather clock in the corner chimed the hour with deep, resonant tones. Distant piano music drifted from another room, soft and haunting. The doors closed softly as servants moved through the halls, carrying trays of fine wine and sweet liqueur. The cast exchanged polite conversation, but beneath the surface, Poirot observed the subtle tensions. Lady Violet's laughter came a fraction too quickly whenever the missing heir was mentioned. Lord Cedric's hand tightened almost imperceptibly on his glass when Captain Drayton spoke of old family letters and a locket that proved his identity. Then the first note of tragedy struck. The butler entered the drawing-room, his footsteps echoing sharply on the polished parquet floor. His face was pale, his hands trembling slightly as he held the silver tray. "My lord, it is the Marquess. He's in his study. The door was locked from inside. He does not answer our knocks." A sudden silence fell over the room, and the crystal chandelier seemed to tinkle more loudly in the stillness. Lady Violet's hand flew gracefully to her throat, her silk gown whispering as she rose. Lord Cedric drew himself up, his jaw tightening in what appeared to be concern. Miss Beatrice gave a small gasp, her fingers twisting a lace handkerchief that never quite reached her eyes. Mr. Voss set his champagne glass down with careful precision. Dr. Marsh moved forward at once, the picture of professional readiness. Poirot tilted his egg-shaped head, his green eyes gleaming with quiet interest. "The study, you say? Locked from within? Lead the way, if you please." The procession moved through the elegant corridors. The scent of fresh flowers gave way to the sharper smell of furniture wax and old leather bindings as they approached the Marquess's private study. The door, heavy oak polished to a mirror shine, indeed stood locked. After a moment's hesitation, the butler produced the master key. The lock clicked open with a soft, final sound. Inside the study, the air felt colder. A window stood slightly ajar, allowing chill terrace air to steal in and mingle with the unmistakable bitter almond scent of poison. The Marquis Reginald Ashford lay slumped forward at his mahogany desk, one hand still resting near an overturned brandy glass. The faint smell of fine wine and bitter almonds hung heavy. A half-written new will lay beneath his fingers, the ink still wet and glistening. It named Captain Philip Drayton as the sole heir to the title, the estates, and the considerable fortune. Poirot moved closer, making an expressive gesture with his small hands. He noted the cold marble inkwell, or the crisp linen blotting paper, the smooth crystal decanter that now stood empty. No signs of struggle marred the elegant room, yet the locked door and open window created an intriguing contradiction. The stage had been perfectly arranged for this moment. Observe, mon ami, this scene plays too neatly. Watch how each actor reacts. Lady Violet dabs at her eyes with a handkerchief that remains perfectly dry. The shoulders shake appropriately, but where is the moisture of real tears? This actor plays grief, but observe the eyes. Where is the true sorrow? Too perfect, too rehearsed. Truth stumbles, lies flow smooth. You watch with Poirot, no? You see how Lord Cedric's hands remain steady as he steps forward to examine the body. Ah, but you say, Poirot reads too much into small gestures. Bear with me. I'm the careful observer, and you are becoming careful, mon ami. Will notice the missed cues. Ask yourself, why does Miss Beatrice avoid looking directly at the new heir? Consider the psychology. What role does each person here need to play right now? The tension rises. Someone will break character soon. We approach the final act, though none of them know it yet. Have you already spotted the first false note in their performances? Poirot smoothed an imaginary wrinkle from his sleeve and drew himself up. His green eyes gleamed with quiet satisfaction as he surveyed the frozen cast. Every actor in this drama had a secret. Poirot, he sees behind the masks. The psychology, it is everything. The stage was set. The actors had taken their places. Let the drama begin. Chapter 2. Enter the players. The morning light filtered softly through the heavy velvet curtains of Ashford Hall's breakfast room, casting long shadows across the long mahogany table, where crisp linen napkins lay untouched, beside delicate cups of strong continental coffee. The scent of fresh hothouse roses and lilies still lingered in the air, now clashing gently with the warm wood smoke rising from the newly lit fire in the marble fireplace. Footsteps on the polished parquet floor sounded heavier this morning, each one echoing like a cue in a script that no one had yet fully admitted was being performed. Hercule Poirot had requested that the entire cast gather for formal interviews in the library. The room, lined with leather-bound volumes and smelling faintly of old paper and furniture wax, formed an ideal backdrop for these opening scenes. He adjusted the objects on the large desk into perfect symmetry. Inkwell, blotting paper, and a small crystal vase of lilies before taking his seat. His egg-shaped head tilted slightly as he observed the players entering one by one. Lady Violet Ashford was the first to take the stage. She entered in a soft wool day dress that still rustled with subtle elegance, her expensive perfume of Chanel trailing behind her like a signature. She performed the role of the grieving widow with practiced grace, dabbing occasionally at her eyes with a lace handkerchief. Reginald had been so melancholy lately, she said, her voice trembling at all of the right pauses. Ever since the news of the missing heir's possible return, he spoke of putting his affairs in order, and the poor man, he must have despaired. Poirot touched his magnificent moustache thoughtfully. Madame, you speak of despair. Yet the new will naming Captain Drayton as heir was half written at the moment of death. A man in despair does not usually begin such important work, no. Lady Violet's performance held steady, though her fingers tightened slightly on the handkerchief. He was conflicted, Monsieur Poirot. That is all. Lord Cedric Ashford followed, his rough tweed jacket carrying the faint scent of the stables and outdoor air. He stood tall, playing the role of the dutiful nephew with measured dignity. I welcomed Captain Drayton as family, he declared, his hands resting calmly on the polished mahogany arm of the chair. Blood is thicker than any will. I would have stepped aside gracefully. When asked about his movements the previous evening, he claimed he had been on the cold terrace smoking a cigar at the time the tragedy occurred. The night air was refreshing after dinner, he added smoothly. Watch this performance carefully. Is it truth or theatre? The mask slips. Did you catch it? This actor plays loyalty, but observe the eyes. Where is the warmth of genuine welcome? Too perfect, too rehearsed. Truth stumbles, lies flow smooth. Miss Beatrice Langford entered next, her laughter a little too bright for the solemn occasion. She wore the same rough tweed travelling suit from the previous evening. Now paired with soft kid gloves, she twisted nervously. I was reading in my room when I heard the clock strike midnight, she said, her eyes wide with apparent innocence. The grandfather clock, you know. It chimed so clearly through the walls. She spoke of her uncle with affection, yet her gaze kept darting toward the window that overlooked the study. You watch with Poirot, no? You see how this one's hands tremble ever so slightly when mentioning the clock? Ah, but you say, Poirot reads too much into small gestures. Bear with me. The careful observer, and you are becoming careful, mon ami, will notice the missed cues. Ask yourself, why does she avoid his eyes when speaking of the new heir? Consider the psychology. What role does this young lady need to play to protect her own future? Mr. Harold Voss, the solicitor, arrived with his leather briefcase, the rich scent of polished leather, mixing with the room's furniture wax. He performed the role of the trusted professional with calm efficiency, and explaining the terms of the old will that had favoured Lord Cedric. The Marquess had spoken of changes for weeks, he said, sipping the hot coffee Poirot had ordered brought in. But the final document was not yet signed. Legally, the previous will would stand if the new one remained incomplete. Dr. Julian Marsh followed, his sandalwood cologne cutting through the warmer notes of coffee and wood smoke. The physician played the concerned family doctor with helpful concern. I prepared a tonic for the Marquess yesterday evening, he admitted. It contained a small medicinal amount of cyanide for his heart condition, strictly controlled, of course. He sometimes suffered palpitations. His hands remained steady as he described the bottle, now found empty on the study sideboard. Finally, Captain Philip Drayton, the returned heir, gave the shortest and quietest scene. He sat composed, still wearing his kid gloves, a faint trace of travel dust and leather on his clothes. I arrived only yesterday afternoon with letters from my mother and the family locket as proof, he said quietly. The Marquess welcomed me warmly. We spoke privately before dinner. I never expected this. Contradictions began to appear like missed lines in a dress rehearsal. Lord Cedric claimed he had been smoking on the terrace, yet no cigar ash or butt had been found in the cold night air there when Poirot later checked. Miss Beatrice insisted she heard the grandfather clock strike midnight clearly from her room, but the butler had wound the clock only that morning and confirmed it was running several minutes slow. Dr. Marsh's tonic story seemed helpful, yet the precise amount of cyanide now missing raised uncomfortable questions. Captain Drayton's locket appeared genuine, but the timing of his arrival felt almost too perfect for the drama. The tension rises. Someone will break character soon. Every actor in this drama has a secret. Poirot, he sees behind the masks. If you were hiding guilt, how would you perform innocence? We approach the final act. Have you identified the true performer yet? Poirot made an expressive gesture with his small hands as the last interview concluded. He smoothed an imaginary wrinkle from his sleeve, his green eyes gleaming with quiet satisfaction. The players had shown their opening roles clearly. Grief, loyalty, innocence, professionalism, and quiet hope. Yet each performance carried faint cracks. Lady Violet's grief lacked genuine tears. Lord Cedric's loyalty rang hollow when the fortune was threatened. Miss Beatrice's innocence felt rehearsed. The solicitor and doctor offered convenient explanations that served their own interests. Even the returned heir's calm seemed carefully measured. Observe, mon ami, this suspect plays their role too perfectly. The mask slips. Did you catch it? This actor plays grief. But observe the eyes. Where is the moisture? Too perfect, too rehearsed. Truth stumbles. Lies flow smooth. The interviews had revealed the first layers of the drama. Each suspect had established their part in the theatre of inheritance. But the little contradictions, the small hesitations, the glances that lingered too long or avoided too carefully, they whispered that not everyone was performing truth. The players had entered. But who performed truth, and who performed lies? Chapter 3. The First Act. Deeper investigation carried Hercule Poirot out onto the wide terrace of Ashford Hall, where cold marble flags still held the chill of the previous night's air, despite the warm drawing-room visible through the tall French windows. The scent of rain on windows mixed with distant wood smoke drifting from the gardener's bonfire beyond the lawns. Fresh flowers from the hothouse had been placed in urns along the balustrade, their sweet perfume clashing with the sharper smell of whetstone and leather from the detective's own gloves. Poirot moved with deliberate steps, his small hands gesturing expressively as he examined the study window from outside. The window stood slightly ajar, exactly as it had been found. A faint tear in the heavy velvet curtain inside was visible even from the terrace, as someone had climbed through here after the door was locked from within. The psychology of the scene spoke clearly. This was no simple suicide. A mask slipped during the first significant revelation in the library. Dr. Julian Marsh, pressed gently but firmly on the matter of the brandy and the tonic, finally admitted more than he intended. "I prepared the tonic for the Marquess yesterday evening," he said, his voice steady at first. "It contained a carefully measured trace of cyanide for his heart condition, but the bottle? It now stands empty on the study sideboard. I cannot explain how the full amount disappeared so quickly." Poirot tilted his egg-shaped head, his green eyes gleaming. He touched his magnificent moustache thoughtfully. "So you supplied the poison yourself, Doctor, and the Marquis died of cyanide in his brandy. A most convenient coincidence, non?" The doctor's face paled beneath his professional mask. His hands, which had remained so steady during the earlier interview, now showed the faintest tremor as he reached for a glass of water. The performance of the concerned family physician began to crack. "I only wished to help," he muttered. "He complained of palpitations after dinner." "Observe, mon ami. This suspect plays their role too perfectly until pressure is applied. Watch how the doctor's confidence falters. The mask slips. Did you catch it? This actor plays helpfulness. But observe the eyes. Where is the genuine concern? Too perfect at first, too rehearsed. Truth stumbles when the spotlight grows hot. The director method. The performance. Dr. Marsh speaks of his medical duty with calm authority. The shoulders are straight, the voice measured, and the explanation logical. He even offers to show his medical bag and records. The tell, but observe, the hands tremble only now, when directly confronted with the missing cyanide. A man truly shocked by his patient's death would have shown unease from the beginning. The body, it knows. The performance of innocence is technically perfect until the little grey cells shine the light. The psychology. I am reminded of the Ackroyd affair, where a man performed shock so convincingly that even I, Hercule Poirot, was momentarily deceived. He had rehearsed in mirrors, practiced the widening of eyes, the dropping of the jaw, the precise tremor in the voice. But he made one fatal error. He reached for his cigarette case with hands too steady for genuine horror. A man truly shocked does not have steady hands when the news first breaks, and the body betrays what the face tries to hide. The little grey cells understand this psychology beneath the performance, the unconscious gestures that reveal the rehearsed nature of the emotion. In that case, the killer had practiced his reaction for days, believing the mask would hold. Yet the steady hand gave him away completely. This is what Poirot sees again today. The doctor knew of the poison long before the death was discovered. His helpfulness is costume, not genuine feeling. The truth. Therefore, Dr. Marsh knew the cyanide had been taken. His concern is a performance, not reality. You see it now, non? The theatre crumbles when the spotlight of truth falls upon it. The first revelation sent ripples through the cast. Lady Violet's silk day dress rustled as she paced near the fireplace, the warm drawing room suddenly feeling too close. Lord Cedric stood by the window, his rough tweed jacket absorbing the heat from the crackling fire, while his face remained carefully composed. Miss Beatrice twisted her soft kid gloves, the leather creaking softly in the quiet room. Mr. Voss arranged his papers with precise movements, the scent of leather from his briefcase mixing with the rich aroma of fresh coffee that a maid had brought in. Poirot continued his deeper examination of the study. The half-written will still lay on the desk, the ink dry now, but the signature never completed. The brandy decanter smelled strongly of bitter almonds. The locked door and open window created the classic locked room illusion, perfect for a stage murder. Yet the psychology pointed elsewhere. Someone had needed the Marquis dead before the new will could be signed and witnessed. You watch with Poirot, non? You see how these actors shift in their seats when the poison is mentioned? But you say Poirot reads too much into small gestures. Bear with me. The careful observer, and you are becoming careful, mon ami, will notice how Lord Cedric avoids looking at the study door. Ask yourself, why does grief perform so differently for each player? Consider the psychology. What role does each person here need to play to survive this drama? The tension rises. Someone will break character soon. We approach the final act. Have you identified the true performer of innocence? Reflection. In this first act, we have watched how desperately every actor clings to their assigned role. Lady Violet performs devoted widowhood, while her eyes scan the room for any advantage the death might bring her. Lord Cedric plays the steadfast nephew, yet his posture stiffens like stone whenever Captain Drayton, the returned heir, is mentioned. Miss Beatrice offers bright innocence, but her laughter rings hollow against the chill terrace air. Humans wear masks because the grand stage of society demands it. Greed performing as grief, ambition disguised as loyalty, fear dressed in the costume of confidence. We are terrified that the naked face would reveal too much, the hunger for title and fortune, the quiet relief that an inconvenient relative has left the stage forever. I recall the case of the veiled lady in Monte Carlo, where a wife performed mourning with such perfection that the entire casino believed her husband's yacht had truly sunk with all hands. She wore elegant black silk, wept delicately at the roulette table, he arranged a lavish memorial service complete with hothouse lilies and champagne toasts to the departed. The scent of expensive perfume and fresh flowers filled the room, while she accepted condolences with just the right tremble in her voice. Yet the little grey cells noticed she never once touched the black veil to her eyes. The fabric remained perfectly dry. In truth, she had strangled him in their private cabin and pushed the body overboard under cover of darkness, then sailed onward alone as the grieving widow. The mask was flawless until the fatal moment when she ordered the exact vintage of champagne they had shared the night he died. Pure joy, not sorrow, guiding her choice. Truth does not rehearse its pleasures so precisely. The universal truth about deception is that it always costs the actor far more than the audience ever sees. Masks feel safe in the moment, but they grow heavier with every line spoken. The psychology of performance reveals itself in the small betrayals. A hand too steady where trembling should occur, a glance that lingers too long on the new heir's locket, or eyes that avoid the very person they claim to mourn. We approach the final act. Have you identified the true performer? The first act concluded. Some masks had cracked. Chapter 4. Rehearsed Lines. The warm drawing-room of Ashford Hall felt heavier that afternoon, as Hercule Poirot began to apply pressure to the cast. Fresh coffee steamed in delicate porcelain cups on the polished mahogany table, its rich aroma mingling with the sweet scent of hothouse lilies, and the faint trace of sweet liqueur someone had poured a little too early in the day. All the fire crackled invitingly in the marble fireplace, casting a golden glow across the velvet curtains. Yet the chill from the terrace seemed to seep through the tall windows, making the room's warmth feel almost artificial. Poirot arranged the objects on a side table into perfect symmetry once more. Silver ashtray, crystal decanter, and a small vase of roses, before turning his attention to the suspects. He had decided it was time to test the alibis, like fragile scripts that might tear under scrutiny. "Let us examine the lines each of you has spoken," he said, making an expressive gesture with his small hands. "The performance, it must hold under the spotlight, non?" He began with Lord Cedric Ashford. The nephew stood near the fireplace in his rough tweed jacket, and the fabric absorbing the fire's heat, while the scent of sandalwood cologne from another guest lingered in the air. "You claimed you were smoking a cigar on the cold terrace at the time of your uncle's death," Poirot said, tilting his egg-shaped head. "Yes, when I examined the terrace this morning, there was no ash, no cigar butt, no sign of recent smoking in the chill night air. The gravel showed footprints, yes, but they led toward the study window, not away from it." Lord Cedric's performance grew visibly strained. His jaw tightened, and he smoothed the front of his jacket with a hand that was no longer quite steady. "Perhaps the wind scattered the ash," he replied, but the line sounded rehearsed and hollow. The grandfather clock chimed the quarter hour, its deep tones underscoring the growing tension. I was simply walking to clear my head. Watch this performance carefully. Is it truth or theatre? The mask slips. Did you catch it? This actor plays the loyal nephew. But observe the eyes. Where is the calm confidence now? Too perfect earlier, too rehearsed. Truth stumbles when the questions grow sharp. Next, Poirot turned the spotlight on Miss Beatrice Langford. She sat on the edge of a velvet-upholstered chair, her rough tweed skirt brushing the parquet floor, fingers twisting a soft kid glove. "You told Poirot you were reading in your room when you heard the grandfather clock strike midnight," the detective continued. "Yet the butler confirms the clock was wound only yesterday morning and runs several minutes slow. It could not have chimed midnight at the correct time. Moreover, and the silk curtain in the study shows a small tear, exactly at the height where a young woman climbing through the window might catch her dress." Miss Beatrice's bright laughter turned brittle and broke off abruptly. Her face flushed as she avoided Poirot's gaze. I must have been mistaken about the time," she stammered. The scent of her light perfume seemed suddenly sharper in the warm room. "Perhaps I fell asleep and dreamed the clock." "You watch with Poirot, non? You see how this one's hands tremble when the curtain is mentioned. Ah, but you say Poirot reads too much into small gestures. Bear with me. The careful observer, and you are becoming careful, mon ami, will notice how the innocent role begins to crack. Ask yourself, why does she avoid looking toward the study window? Consider the psychology. What role does this young lady need to play when her own future is threatened by a new heir. Mr. Harold Voss, the solicitor, fared no better when questioned about the timing of the new will. He clutched his leather briefcase, the rich scent of polished leather filling the space around him as he shifted uncomfortably. The Marquess discussed changes for weeks, he insisted, but his voice lacked its earlier professional smoothness. The document was not yet witnessed. Legally, yes, Poirot interrupted gently. But you were the one who brought the new will paper to the study after dinner. Your fingerprints are on the blotter. Why did you not mention this small detail earlier? The solicitor's face paled. He reached for his hot coffee, but set the cup down again when his hand shook, and the performance of the trusted adviser began to falter noticeably. Dr. Julian Marsh fared worst of all. Pressed again on the cyanide tonic, the doctor's helpful mask crumbled further. I only prepared what he requested, he said, his sandalwood cologne no longer masking the faint sweat breaking on his brow. He insisted on keeping the bottle in his study. I never imagined it would be used so conveniently, Poirot asked, his green eyes gleaming with satisfaction. He smoothed an imaginary wrinkle from his sleeve. The bottle is now empty. The brandy glass contained far more than a medicinal trace. Your lines, Doctor, they do not hold together. Lady Violet Ashford watched the proceedings from her place near the tall windows, her silk day dress rustling softly with every nervous movement. She attempted to play the grieving widow still, but her dabs at the eyes with the lace handkerchief had grown mechanical. The champagne cork from the previous evening seemed a distant memory in this strained atmosphere. Must we endure this inquisition? She asked, her voice rising. My husband is barely cold. Madam, Poirot replied calmly, truth needs no rehearsal. Lies, however, require constant practice, and the scripts here are beginning to fail. The tension in the room rose like a crescendo. Footsteps on the parquet sounded sharper as servants moved discreetly outside the door. The crystal chandelier tinkled faintly overhead with a draught from the terrace. Captain Philip Drayton sat quietly, observing the others, his kid gloves still on, the faint scent of travel leather clinging to him. His performance of the quiet returned. Heir remained the most composed. For now, observe, mon ami, this suspect plays their role with increasing strain. The mask slips. Did you catch it? This actor plays helpfulness and loyalty. But observe the hands. Where is the steadiness of innocence? Too rehearsed at the beginning. Truth does not need to remember every line so carefully. If you were hiding guilt, how would you perform innocence under such pressure? The drama building. Someone will break character very soon. We approach the final act. Have you spotted whose lines are faltering the most? Poirot drew himself up to his full, though still small, height. His green eyes gleamed as he surveyed the cast. Rehearsed lines had begun to falter under the weight of truth. Alibis tested as scripts were showing their weaknesses, so false performances were being exposed, one small crack at a time. Rehearsed lines began to falter. The script was failing. Chapter 5. The Mask Slips. The major confrontation unfolded in the library of Ashford Hall, as rain lashed fiercely against the tall windows, the sound drumming steadily on the glass like an impatient audience. The grandfather clock chimed relentlessly in the corner, its deep tones echoing through the room lined with leather-bound volumes. Inside, the air felt thick with tension, the warm fire crackling in the marble fireplace offering little comfort against the chill that had settled over the cast. Hercule Poirot stood at the centre, directing the scene with quiet authority. He had arranged the suspects in a semicircle, of the polished mahogany table between them, holding only a single crystal vase of hothouse lilies, whose sweet scent now seemed cloying. His small hands made an expressive gesture as he began. "Mesdames et messieurs, the time for polite performances has ended. We now move to the heart of the drama." He turned first to Lord Cedric Ashford, who stood near the fireplace in his rough tweed jacket, the fabric absorbing the fire's warmth, while the scent of sandalwood from Dr. Marsh lingered nearby. "Lord Cedric, you have played the loyal nephew with great skill. You welcomed the returned heir. You spoke of stepping aside gracefully. Yet your shoes still carry traces of terrace gravel, and those footprints lead directly to the study window, the very window left ajar after the door was locked from inside." Lord Cedric's face remained composed at first, but Poirot pressed on. "More importantly, you described the family locket in precise detail yesterday morning, before anyone had shown it to you. Captain Drayton had kept it hidden in his pocket until the police arrived. How did you know its exact engraving? Its small scratch on the back, unless you had seen it earlier. Perhaps when you met the real Philip Drayton in secret." The nephew's shoulders stiffened. His hand reached instinctively for the mantelpiece, the cold marble steadying him as the performance began to crack. "That is ridiculous," he said, but the voice lacked its earlier confidence. The rain on the windows grew louder, as if nature itself provided dramatic accompaniment. Poirot's green eyes gleamed with satisfaction. He touched his magnificent moustache thoughtfully. The real Captain Philip Drayton lies dead in the boathouse, his head crushed by the missing poker from this very study. You met him the night before last, offered him money to disappear again, and when he refused, because the Marquess had already welcomed him, you struck him down. Then you returned here, climbed through the study window after locking the door from inside, and poisoned your uncle's brandy with the cyanide Dr. Marsh had so conveniently supplied." Lord Cedric's mask fell completely in that moment. The tall, confident man who had played the dutiful heir so convincingly now clutched the cold marble mantelpiece, his body shaking with raw terror rather than rehearsed grief. No tears came, but his breath came in short, ragged gasps. The rough tweed jacket suddenly seemed too heavy, too warm in the firelit room. He was going to take everything," Cedric whispered at last, the words tumbling out like a long-rehearsed line finally abandoned. "I was the one who stayed. I managed the estates while my uncle searched for that bastard child of his son. And then this stranger appears with a locket and letters, and suddenly I am nothing." An emotional breakdown followed as the true feeling emerged. Cedric's voice cracked, revealing years of resentment and fear of losing the only life he had known. "I only wanted what was mine by right. The title, the land, they were promised to me." His hands trembled violently now. The steady composure of the earlier performances shattered. The psychology was clear. Greed had performed as loyalty until the mask could no longer hold. "Observe, mon ami, this performance has collapsed entirely. Watch how the loyal nephew transforms before our eyes." The mask slips. Did you catch it? This actor played confidence and generosity. But observe the eyes. Where is any trace of remorse? Too perfect in the beginning. Truth stumbles when the pressure becomes unbearable. You watch with Poirot, non? You see how his shoulders shake, but not with grief, with fear of exposure. But you say, Poirot reads too much into small gestures. Bear with me, the careful observer, and you are becoming careful, mon ami, will notice the real emotion at last. Ask yourself, if you were hiding such guilt, How long could you maintain the role of the innocent heir? Consider the psychology. What role does a man like Lord Cedric need to play when his entire future is threatened by the return of the true bloodline? The other suspects sat frozen in their seats. Lady Violet's silk dress rustled as she pressed a hand to her throat. Her earlier performance of grief now looking pale and shallow by comparison. Miss Beatrice twisted her soft kid gloves, the leather creaking softly, her bright laughter long gone. Mr. Voss clutched his leather briefcase tightly, the rich scent of polished leather, mixing with the wood smoke from the fire. Dr. Marsh looked visibly ill, his sandalwood cologne unable to mask the sweat on his brow. Poirot drew himself up to his full, though still small, height. His green eyes gleamed as he continued the confrontation. You killed the real heir first to remove the obstacle, then eliminated your uncle before the new will could be properly witnessed and signed. The locked door was meant to suggest suicide. The open window and the torn curtain were mistakes born of haste. The performance was clever, Lord Cedric, but not clever enough for Poirot. Lord Cedric sank into a chair, the fight draining from him as the emotional breakdown deepened. The true face emerged at last, bitter, frightened, and stripped of all pretense. No more loyal nephew, no more gracious host, only a man who had worn the mask of family devotion, while nursing deep resentment and murderous ambition. The mask had fallen. The true face emerged, the director method. The performance, Lord Cedric played the shocked and cooperative nephew with skill. He offered help, expressed appropriate concern, and maintained steady hands through the early interviews. The tell, but observe, the description of the locket came too early, too detailed. A man who had never seen it could not know the small scratch or the exact engraving, and the body betrayed him when the pressure increased. The hands that had been so steady now trembled violently. The psychology. I am reminded of the case of the false heir in the Scottish castle, where a distant cousin performed the role of grieving relative so convincingly that the entire household accepted him. He wore rough tweed like a country gentleman, spoke of old family memories with tears in his voice, even arranged flowers on the grave with trembling hands. Yet he made one fatal error. He knew the combination of the safe without ever being told. The little grey cells noticed how his hands moved with too much confidence when no one was watching. A true stranger would hesitate. The psychology beneath the performance is always the same. Greed forces the actor to rehearse every line, but the unconscious mind reveals the truth in small, unguarded moments. The truth. Therefore, Lord Cedric knew the real heir and eliminated him first. His loyalty was costume, not feeling. You see it now, non? The theatre crumbles when the mask can no longer hide the true face beneath. The rain continued to lash the windows as the confrontation reached its peak. The crystal chandelier tinkled faintly overhead with a sudden draught. The warm drawing-room felt distant now. The stage transformed into a place of raw revelation. One mask had fallen completely, exposing the darkness behind the performance of family loyalty. The mask had fallen. The true face emerged. Chapter 6. Behind the Curtain. The rain had eased into a steady drizzle by the time Hercule Poirot drew the cast deeper behind the curtain of Ashford Hall. In the quiet library, the scent of leather-bound books mixed with the rich aroma of fresh continental coffee that a maid had silently brought in on a silver tray. The fire crackled softly in the marble fireplace, its warm glow contrasting the chill that still clung to the velvet curtains and the cold marble mantelpiece. Soft kid gloves and crisp linen napkins lay discarded on side tables, forgotten props in a drama that had moved from elegant performance to raw exposure. Past secrets emerged like carefully stored props dragged unwillingly into the light. Lady Violet Ashford, her silk day dress now slightly crumpled, confessed with trembling lips that she had feared losing her generous widow's settlement if the new will stood. "Reginald promised me security," she whispered, her expensive Chanel perfume still clinging to her as she dabbed at eyes that finally showed real moisture. With a new heir, everything might change. I spoke to Cedric about it the night before. Miss Beatrice Langford broke next, her rough tweed skirt brushing the parquet as she twisted her soft kid gloves nervously. The sweet scent of liqueur on her breath betrayed an earlier attempt to steady her nerves. "I had gambling debts in London," she admitted, her voice small. "Uncle Reginald knew and threatened to cut me off if I did not reform. When the new heir appeared, I panicked. I climbed through the study window after hearing raised voices. I only wanted to see the will, not to harm anyone." The torn silk curtain in the study now made perfect sense as her desperate exit. Dr. Julian Marsh, his sandalwood cologne unable to mask the sweat of fear, revealed how he had supplied the cyanide tonic, knowing full well its potential. "The Marquis insisted," he said, staring into the fire's flames, "but I should have refused. Cedric asked me later if the dose could be strengthened. I told him it was dangerous, but I did not stop him." His hands shook as he accepted a cup of hot coffee, the steam rising like a final curtain on his medical career. Mr. Harold Voss, clutching his leather briefcase, admitted he had prepared the new will paper and delivered it to the study after dinner, hoping to curry favour with whichever heir ultimately prevailed. "I am a practical man," he said quietly, the rich leather scent strong in the warm room. "I serve the estate, not individuals." Hidden connections surfaced one by one, exposing the backstage of relationships that had seemed so harmonious on the surface. Lord Cedric had met the real Philip Drayton secretly, 2 nights earlier in the boathouse by the lake. He had offered a large sum of money for the young man to disappear again, and never claim the title. When the real heir, armed with letters and the family locket, refused citing his dying mother's wish, Cedric had struck him down with the heavy brass poker from the study. The body now lay hidden beneath tarpaulins in the boathouse, the faint smell of damp wood and river water still clinging to Cedric's shoes when Poirot had examined them earlier. The true Philip Drayton had been no impostor. Letters found in his coat confirmed his identity as the son of the Marquis's estranged eldest son, born in secret during a youthful affair abroad, and the locket contained a miniature portrait and a lock of hair matching the Marquis's own. Captain Drayton had arrived genuinely hoping for reconciliation, only to meet death at the hands of the man who feared losing everything. Poirot moved slowly around the room, his egg-shaped head tilted as he listened to each confession. He smoothed an imaginary wrinkle from his sleeve, his green eyes gleaming with quiet understanding. The grandfather clock chimed softly in the distance, marking the passage of this painful backstage revelation. The distant sound of rain on windows provided a melancholy accompaniment, while the scent of wood smoke from the fire wrapped the room in intimate warmth. Observe, mon ami, this is the true theatre, hidden from the audience until now. Watch how the masks of family loyalty fall away. Oh, the mask slips. Did you catch it? These actors played devotion and unity. But observe their eyes. Where is the genuine love? Too rehearsed on the public stage. Truth stumbles when forced behind the curtain. You watch with Poirot, no? You see how Lady Violet's hands no longer tremble, with calculated grief but with real relief mixed with shame? Ah, but you say, Poirot reads too much into small gestures. Bear with me, the careful observer, and you are becoming careful, mon ami. Will notice the psychology of hidden motives. Ask yourself, why does greed perform so convincingly as family affection until the curtain is pulled aside? Consider the psychology. What role does each person here need to play when the fortune is at stake? The tension had shifted, no longer rising toward a breaking point, though it now settled into the heavy quiet of truths laid bare. Captain Philip Drayton, the false name the real heir had used for safety, had been eliminated not because he was an impostor, but because he was the genuine article. Lord Cedric's resentment had festered for years while he managed the estates, believing the title would one day be his. The return of the lost heir had shattered that illusion in a single afternoon. Behind the curtain, the relationships stood exposed in all their ugliness. Jealousy dressed as concern, fear performing as loyalty, ambition masked as duty. Even the helpful doctor and the practical solicitor had played their small parts, supplying poison and legal papers while pretending neutrality. The elegant country house, once the perfect stage for refined society, had now revealed itself as a theatre of hidden greed and calculated betrayal. If you were hiding such guilt, how would you perform innocence once the backstage is revealed? The spotlight of truth has moved behind the scenes. We approach the final act. Have you seen how every secret connects to the central motive? Poirot drew himself up, making an expressive gesture with his small hands. The warm drawing room felt distant now. The true drama had played out in the shadows. In the boathouse, through the study window, and in the desperate conversations held in quiet corners. Reflection behind every curtain we have now seen a secret, and behind every secret a motive sharper than any dagger. Lord Cedric performed the helpful nephew, while his hands still carried the faint scent of the boathouse tar, and the weight of the murder weapon, and Lady Violet played the grieving widow while calculating her financial security. Miss Beatrice offered bright innocence while hiding debts that made her desperate. Humans wear masks because truth feels far too dangerous on the grand stage of society and family. We perform the roles expected of us: devoted relative, loyal friend, concerned professional, while the little grey cells scream the opposite beneath the surface. Greed dresses elegantly as sorrow, fear as confidence, hate as blood loyalty. The psychology here is as old as theatre itself. The stage of inheritance has always demanded the greatest performances, because the prize is everything: title, fortune, identity. I recall the tragedy aboard the Orient Express, where 12 actors each played their small but crucial part in a collective act of vengeance, and their masks of innocence were so perfectly coordinated that even I nearly believed the elaborate lie. They moved through the dining car with polite conversation, champagne glasses clinking, the scent of cigar smoke and fresh hothouse lilies masking any trace of blood on their sleeves. One man performed overwhelming grief for a stranger so convincingly that his hands shook on perfect cue. Yet the little grey cells noticed they all reached for the same sugar bowl with identical steadiness, rehearsed, synchronized, false. The body knew the truth even when the faces lied in unison. A true innocent does not move with such coordinated precision under shock. The psychology beneath the performance revealed itself in those small, unguarded moments when no one thought they were being watched. And the universal truth is that hidden motives always rot the performance from within. They force the actor to rehearse constantly, yet the soul was never designed to wear a mask forever. The weight grows heavier with every line until the fabric tears and the true face appears, raw, frightened, and desperately human. We approach the final act. The spotlight of truth is about to shine fully. On whom will it fall with finality? Behind every curtain, a secret. Every secret, a motive. Chapter 7. The final act. The cast assembled in the grand drawing room of Ashford Hall for the final performance. Crystal chandeliers tinkled softly overhead with every faint draught, casting sparkling light across the polished mahogany tables and heavy velvet curtains, and the scent of hothouse lilies mingled with strong continental coffee, and the faint trace of sweet liqueur that no one had the stomach to drink. A warm fire crackled in the marble fireplace, yet the chill night air from the terrace seemed to press against the tall windows, turning the elegant room into a stage stripped of all illusion. Hercule Poirot stood at the centre, directing the last act with quiet mastery. He had arranged the suspects in a careful semicircle, their faces lit dramatically by the firelight and chandelier glow. Lord Cedric sat slumped in a high-backed chair, his rough tweed jacket wrinkled, the confident mask of the loyal nephew long discarded. Lady Violet perched on the edge of a velvet sofa in her silk day-dress, her hands clasped tightly. Miss Beatrice twisted her soft kid gloves nervously, as while Mr. Voss clutched his leather briefcase and Dr. Marsh stared into the flames in his sandalwood cologne, unable to hide his pallor. The real heir's absence hung heavy over them all. Poirot drew himself up to his full, though still small, height, and addressed them as the director of this tragic drama. Mesdames et messieurs, you have each performed for Poirot. Some truthfully, some not. Let us review the performances, shall we? Lady Violet, you played the grieving widow with delicate precision. The hand to the throat, the lace handkerchief dabbing at dry eyes, the trembling voice at all of the right moments. But the grief, it was costume. You feared losing your generous settlement if the new will stood, so you spoke privately with Lord Cedric about the threat of the returned heir. As your performance of devotion masked simple greed and self-preservation. Lady Violet's face flushed, but she remained silent, her silk gown rustling as she shifted uncomfortably. Lord Cedric, you performed the loyal nephew with great skill at first. You welcomed the returned heir with open arms, or so you claimed. You spoke of stepping aside gracefully, your posture steady, your hands calm. But loyalty does not hide a body in the boathouse. Loyalty does not crush a man's skull with a poker, and then poison an uncle to prevent a new will from being signed. You met the real Philip Drayton secretly, offered him money to disappear, and when he refused, you eliminated him. Then you climbed through the study window after locking the door from inside, poured the cyanide into the brandy, and left the half-written will as a perfect stage prop suggesting suicide. Lord Cedric's head dropped, his shoulders shaking with the remnants of his earlier breakdown. No more steady hands, no more rehearsed lines. Miss Beatrice gave a small gasp as Poirot turned to her. Miss Beatrice, your role was the innocent bystander. The bright laughter, the wide eyes, the nervous twisting of gloves. Yet innocent bystanders do not tear silk curtains climbing desperately from the study window after hearing raised voices. You were there that night, driven by your gambling debts and fear of being cut off. You saw more than you admitted, but you chose silence to protect your own small hopes. Mr. Voss and Dr. Marsh received their notices in turn. Mr. Voss, you played the trusted solicitor with professional calm, delivering the new will paper while hedging your bets on who would ultimately win the fortune. Dr. Marsh, you performed the concerned physician, supplying the cyanide tonic, knowing its potential danger. Helpfulness masking complicity. Both of you enabled the tragedy with your convenient services. Poirot paused, making an expressive gesture with his small hands. The grandfather clock chimed solemnly in the background, its deep tones marking the final moments of the performance. The scent of wood smoke from the fire wrapped the room, as rain tapped gently on the windows outside. And so we come to our leading performer, Lord Cedric Ashford. You gave the most convincing performance of all. The shock at your uncle's death, the outrage at the idea of a new heir, the helpful cooperation in the investigation. Magnifique. How you maintained steady hands through the early scenes. You described the family locket in precise detail before anyone had shown it to you. Its engraving, its small scratch. That was the fatal slip. Only the killer who had met the real Philip Drayton in the boathouse and seen the locket could have known those details. The performance was clever, Lord Cedric. The locked door suggesting suicide, the open window creating confusion, the poison carefully chosen. But you made one error. One small moment when the mask slipped. You forgot that truth does not rehearse. Your body knew the guilt even when your face lied. The steady hands gave you away first, and the detailed knowledge of the locket sealed the curtain call. Lord Cedric looked up at last, his face naked and stripped of all pretense. The true face, bitter, frightened, and unbroken, stared back at the assembled cast. No applause greeted the revelation, only silence and the soft crackling of the fire. Poirot's green eyes gleamed with quiet satisfaction as he smoothed an imaginary wrinkle from his sleeve. The psychology, it is everything. Greed performed as loyalty, fear performed as confidence, hate performed as family devotion. But every actor eventually forgets their lines. The little grey cells see what the audience misses. The small betrayals of the body, the inconsistencies in the script, the hidden motives behind the elegant masks. Observe, mon ami, this final act has stripped every role bare. Watch how the loyal nephew crumbles completely. The mask slips. Did you catch it? This actor played innocence and grief so convincingly at first. But observe the eyes. Where is any trace of genuine sorrow now? It's too perfect in the early scenes. Truth triumphs when the spotlight shines without mercy. You watch with Poirot, no? You see how each performance collapses under the weight of truth. Ah, but you say Poirot reads too much into small gestures. Bear with me. The careful observer, and you are becoming careful, mon ami, will notice how the entire theatre transforms in this moment. Ask yourself, if you were the murderer, how long could you maintain the role once all the connections are revealed? Consider the psychology. What role does a man need to play when everything he desires is threatened by the return of true blood? The tension that had built through every act now reached its crescendo and broke. The cast sat motionless, their roles finally exposed. Lady Violet wept quietly, but not for the dead Marquess, but for the comfortable life now slipping away. Miss Beatrice looked pale and shaken, her debts suddenly small compared to the horror she had witnessed. The solicitor and doctor stared at the floor, their professional masks shattered. Poirot tilted his egg-shaped head, his voice soft yet final. The performance is over. The curtain falls. The truth, she takes her bow. The final act concluded. Only truth survived the curtain call. Chapter 8. Curtain Call. The final act had ended, and now the curtain call began in the grand drawing-room of Ashford Hall. The crystal chandeliers still tinkled softly overhead, their light reflecting off the polished mahogany tables and the heavy velvet curtains that framed the tall windows. Outside, the rain had stopped, leaving only the chill night air pressing against the glass, and the distant sound of water dripping from the eaves inside. The warm fire crackled in the marble fireplace, its glow illuminating faces now stripped of their elegant masks. The scent of hothouse lilies mixed with the rich aroma of strong continental coffee that no one touched, while the faint trace of sweet liqueur lingered like a forgotten prop. Police had arrived shortly after Poirot's revelation, their heavy footsteps echoing on the parquet floor as they moved through the halls with quiet efficiency. Lord Cedric Ashford was led away in handcuffs, his rough tweed jacket hanging loosely on his slumped shoulders. The confident posture of the loyal nephew had vanished completely. He no longer played any role. The true face remained exposed, bitter, defeated and broken. As the officers guided him toward the door, Cedric glanced back once at the assembled cast, his eyes empty of the rehearsed concern he had shown earlier. Lady Violet Ashford sat on the velvet sofa, her silk day dress now wrinkled and her expensive Chanel perfume seeming out of place in the raw aftermath. She no longer dabbed at dry eyes with theatrical grace. Real tears finally came, not for her dead husband, but for the secure future she had feared losing, and now saw slipping away entirely. "I never wanted anyone harmed," she whispered, her voice small and trembling without rehearsal. "I only spoke to Cedric because I was frightened. The settlement, it was all I had left." Her hands shook as she accepted a crisp linen napkin from a maid, the fabric soft against her cold fingers. Miss Beatrice Langford stood near the fireplace, her rough tweed skirt brushing the floor, as she twisted her soft kid gloves one final time. The bright laughter and wide-eyed innocence had disappeared. She looked younger and more vulnerable now, the gambling debts that had driven her desperation suddenly insignificant beside the horror of murder. "I climbed through the window only to look at the will," she said quietly to the inspector. "I heard voices, shouting. I was afraid Uncle would disinherit me completely. I never imagined Cedric would—" Her voice broke, and genuine emotion surfaced at last. No performance, only regret and shock. Mr. Harold Voss remained seated at the mahogany table, his leather briefcase open but ignored. The practical solicitor who had hedged his bets now appeared smaller, his professional calm shattered. "I delivered the will paper as requested," he admitted to the police, his voice flat. "I thought it was routine. I never suspected." He rubbed his hands together, the faint scent of leather still clinging to his fingers, but the gestures lacked their earlier precision. Dr. Julian Marsh stood by the tall windows, staring out into the cold terrace, where the marble flags gleamed wetly under the moonlight. His sandalwood cologne mixed with the wood smoke from the dying fire. The helpful physician who had supplied the cyanide now faced the consequences of his complicity. "I should have refused the tonic," he said hoarsely. The Marquess insisted, and Cedric asked questions later. "I told myself it was only medicine, but I knew." His hands, once steady during examinations, I trembled visibly as he accepted a cup of hot coffee that grew cold untouched. Poirot moved among them like a director watching the final bows. He touched his magnificent moustache thoughtfully, then smoothed an imaginary wrinkle from his sleeve. His green eyes gleamed with quiet satisfaction, though no triumph coloured his expression, only the calm recognition that order and method had prevailed. "The performances are finished," he said softly. "Each of you played your role until the mask could no longer hold. Greed performed as grief, fear performed as loyalty, ambition performed as family devotion, but the theatre of crime allows no encore for lies. Observe, mon ami, this curtain call reveals more than the final act ever could. Watch how the actors stand without their scripts. The mask slips. Did you catch it? Are these performers who moved so gracefully through grief and innocence now stand naked before justice, too perfect in their roles earlier? Truth needs no rehearsal, and now it stands alone on the stage. You watch with Poirot, no? You see how Lady Violet's shoulders no longer shake with calculated sorrow, but with genuine loss. Ah, but you say Poirot reads too much into small gestures. Bear with me, the careful observer, and you are becoming careful, mon ami, will notice the transformations. Ask yourself, when the applause never comes, how does each actor face the empty theatre? Consider the psychology. What role remains when the costume of wealth and position is stripped away? The police continued their work with quiet efficiency. Statements were taken, the boathouse searched again under bright torches, the poker recovered, and the body of the real Philip Drayton carefully removed. The half-written will lay sealed as evidence, its ink now dry and its promises forever unfulfilled. The study door, once locked from inside to create the perfect illusion, stood open, the bitter almond scent long faded, but the memory lingering. Justice began its slow, methodical walk. Lord Cedric would face trial for 2 murders, the real heir in the boathouse and the Marquess in the locked study. The others faced lesser charges, or at least the ruin of their reputations. No dramatic resistance marked the departure. Cedric walked quietly, his head bowed, the leading performer reduced to silence. The elegant country house, once the perfect stage for Art Deco refinement and society weekends, now felt hollow. The grandfather clock chimed the late hour, its tones echoing through empty corridors. Servants moved discreetly, clearing away untouched champagne glasses and crisp linen napkins that would never be used again in the same way. The scent of fresh flowers seemed almost mocking in the aftermath. Poirot paused near the fireplace, making an expressive gesture with his small hands. "No applause for this performance," he murmured, "only justice. The curtain has fallen, and the theatre empties. Each actor leaves changed, some stripped of fortune, others of illusion, all of their carefully rehearsed masks." Lady Violet rose slowly, her silk dress whispering one last time against the parquet. Miss Beatrice followed, her steps hesitant. The solicitor and doctor were escorted for further questioning. As the room gradually cleared, the warm drawing-room lost its earlier vibrancy, and the fire burned lower, the chandeliers seemed dimmer, and the chill from the terrace crept further inside. The transformations were complete. The grieving widow became a frightened woman facing uncertain security. The innocent niece confronted her own weaknesses and debts. The loyal nephew revealed as murderer. The trusted professionals exposed as enablers. Even the house itself seemed to settle, no longer a glittering stage, but simply an old estate awaiting new owners who would never know the full drama that had played out within its walls. No applause for this performance, only justice. Chapter 9. after the show. The theatre of Ashford Hall gradually emptied in the days following the curtain call. Morning light filtered through the heavy velvet curtains, casting softer shadows across the polished mahogany tables and marble fireplaces that had once framed such elegant performances. The scent of hothouse lilies and fresh roses still lingered faintly in the drawing-room, though the flowers themselves had begun to wilt in their crystal vases. Crisp linen napkins lay neatly folded on side tables, untouched since the final night, while the rich aroma of continental coffee drifted from the kitchen as servants prepared a quiet breakfast. The chill terrace air no longer pressed dramatically against the windows. Instead, a gentle calm had settled over the estate. Lady Violet Ashford chose quiet retirement abroad. She packed her silk evening gowns and expensive Chanel perfume with deliberate care, her once graceful movements now stripped of theatrical flourish, and no more dabbing at dry eyes or playing the devoted widow. The mask of elegant society wife had been discarded entirely. In its place stood a woman facing an uncertain future, with diminished settlement and damaged reputation. "I will live simply," she told Poirot on the morning of her departure, her voice quiet and free of rehearsal. "The title and fortune were never truly mine. Perhaps that is the lesson." She left in a hired car, the wheels crunching on the gravel drive, her shoulders no longer shaking with calculated grief, but carrying the weight of genuine reflection. The transformation was complete, from performer of sorrow to a woman learning to face truth without costume. Miss Beatrice Langford remained a few days longer to settle her affairs. Her rough tweed travelling suit returned, practical and unadorned, and the bright laughter and nervous twisting of soft kid gloves had vanished. She confronted her gambling debts openly, selling a small piece of family jewellery to begin repayment. "I climbed through that window out of fear and selfishness," she confessed to Poirot one quiet afternoon in the library, the scent of leather-bound books and furniture wax surrounding them. "I thought the new heir would ruin everything. Now I see how small my worries were compared to what Cedric did." She found honest work in London through a distant relative, a modest position that offered no title or fortune but genuine purpose. The innocent bystander had transformed into a young woman determined to rebuild without masks or shortcuts. The psychology of her change was clear. Exposure to real guilt had stripped away the performance of carefree youth, leaving room for honest growth. The estate itself passed quietly to distant cousins who had no knowledge of the drama that had unfolded. They would arrive later to take possession, never knowing how the warm drawing-room had once hosted performances of loyalty and grief, or how the study window had served as an actor's desperate exit. The boathouse stood silent now, its tarpaulins removed, and the terrible secret carried away with the body of the real Philip Drayton. The house, once the glittering stage for Art Deco elegance and weekend society, settled into peaceful repose. Footsteps on the parquet no longer carried tension. The grandfather clock chimed with steady, unhurried tones. The crystal chandeliers hung still, their tinkling silenced until new voices filled the rooms. Mr. Harold Voss and Dr. Julian Marsh faced professional consequences. The solicitor's leather briefcase no longer symbolized trusted authority. His reputation suffered from his willingness to hedge bets on the inheritance. He retired quietly to a smaller practice in the north, his precise movements and professional calm replaced by cautious reflection. Dr. Marsh lost his medical license for supplying the cyanide without proper safeguards. The helpful physician who had hovered so attentively now confronted the cost of complicity. Both men left Ashford Hall stripped of their roles. No more trusted advisor or concerned doctor, only ordinary men who had enabled tragedy through small moral compromises. Poirot remained one final day, walking the grounds where cold marble flags of the terrace met the lawns still damp from recent rain. He arranged a few fallen rose petals into neat patterns on a stone bench, his small hands moving with familiar precision. The scent of wood smoke from a distant gardener's fire mixed with the fresh outdoor air. He touched his magnificent moustache thoughtfully as he reflected on the transformations he had witnessed. Observe, mon ami. This is what follows every great performance. Watch how the actors depart, the stage changed forever. The mask slips one last time. Did you catch it? These players who moved so elegantly through their roles now walk into ordinary lives without scripts or spotlights. Too perfect in their earlier portrayals, truth does not need rehearsal, and its aftermath reshapes everyone it touches. You watch with Poirot, no? You see how Lady Violet's silk poise has given way to quiet humility. But you say, Poirot reads too much into small gestures. Bear with me. The careful observer, and you are becoming careful, mon ami, will notice the deepest changes. Ask yourself, when the theatre empties and the applause never comes, what remains of the person beneath the mask? Consider the psychology. What role does one adopt when society's demanding script is finally torn away? The psychology of revelation had worked its slow magic on each character. Greed that once performed as grief now faced empty hands. Fear that dressed as confidence learned the cost of silence. Hate that hid behind loyalty stood exposed and punished. Even the house itself seemed transformed, from a glittering stage of inheritance battles to a peaceful estate awaiting simpler times. The real heir, Philip Drayton, had received a proper burial with the family locket placed gently in his coffin. His brief return to the stage ending in tragedy, but securing at least a measure of justice. As the sun climbed higher, casting warm light across the drawing room, Poirot prepared to depart. He smoothed an imaginary wrinkle from his sleeve and made an expressive gesture with his small hands toward the empty room. The warm fire no longer crackled with tension. The crystal glasses stood clean and unused. The theatre had emptied. The grand weekend that began with elegant performances of society and family had concluded with raw truth and its inevitable consequences. Lady Violet's car disappeared down the long drive. Miss Beatrice followed shortly after, carrying only a small suitcase and the lessons of the drama. The servants closed the tall windows against the chill air, and the house settled into silence, broken only by the steady ticking of the grandfather clock and the soft rustle of velvet curtains in a gentle breeze. Transformations shown. Futures indicated it, however modest and honest they might now be. The elegant country house, once alive with the rustle of silk gowns, the pop of champagne corks, and the calculated laughter of performers, now breathed easier. No more hidden connections or rehearsed lines. Only the quiet aftermath where truth lingered longer than any mask ever could. The theatre emptied. The lessons remained. Chapter 10. Poirot reviews the performance. In the quiet comfort of his London apartment, Hercule Poirot sat in his favourite armchair, beside a small table where a tisane steamed gently in a delicate porcelain cup, and the rich aroma of strong continental coffee from his earlier breakfast still lingered faintly in the air, mixing with the clean scent of furniture wax on the polished mahogany surfaces. Soft kid gloves lay neatly folded nearby, while outside the tall windows a gentle rain tapped rhythmically against the glass, providing a soothing backdrop to his reflections. The room was a haven of order and method, everything arranged with perfect symmetry, from the silver candlesticks to the crisp linen napkin beside his cup. Here, far from the grand stage of Ashford Hall, Poirot could review the entire performance in peace. The news of the characters' fates had reached him gradually. Lord Cedric Ashford awaited trial for 2 murders, his leading role reduced to that of a condemned man stripped of all pretense. Milady Violet had settled into quiet retirement on the continent, her silk gowns and theatrical grief replaced by simpler dresses and honest solitude. Miss Beatrice had begun modest work in London, her gambling debts slowly being repaid, and her bright, nervous laughter transformed into quiet determination. Mr. Voss and Dr. Marsh faced ruined careers, their professional masks shattered beyond repair. The estate of Ashford Hall now belonged to distant cousins who would never know the full drama that had played out within its elegant walls. The theatre had emptied, but the lessons of the performance lingered strongly in Poirot's mind. People perform rather than reveal truth because the naked face terrifies them. Society hands every individual a script from the moment they step onto the stage of life. The devoted wife, the loyal heir, and the charming niece, the trusted professional. We wear the masks because we fear rejection, poverty, loss of status, or the withdrawal of love if the real self were to appear. Greed performs as grief because grief wins sympathy and perhaps a larger share of fortune. Fear performs as confidence because confidence keeps suspicion away. Hate performs as family loyalty because open resentment would destroy the delicate balance of inheritance and society. In the case of Ashford Hall, each actor clung desperately to their role until the weight of truth became too heavy to bear. The masks society demands are particularly heavy in matters of wealth and title. The elegant country house, with its Art Deco crystal chandeliers, polished mahogany, and hothouse flowers, provided the perfect glittering stage where performances could flourish. Yet behind the rustle of silk evening gowns and the pop of champagne corks, the psychology remained primitive. Lord Cedric performed the steadfast nephew for years, while resentment festered inside him. Lady Violet played the gracious second wife while calculating her financial security. Miss Beatrice offered bright innocence while hiding debts that made her desperate. Even the doctor and solicitor performed helpfulness, while enabling tragedy through small moral compromises. The body always rebels against the mask eventually. Hands tremble when they should remain steady. Eyes avoid the very person they claim to mourn. A voice cracks when the rehearsed line no longer fits the truth. Guilt always betrays the actor, because the soul was never meant to wear a mask forever. The little grey cells understand this better than any evidence, as in Ashford Hall, the fatal tell was Lord Cedric's detailed description of the locket before anyone had shown it to him. That single slip revealed he had met the real Philip Drayton in the boathouse. The steady hands that had remained calm during the early interviews began to shake when pressure increased. These small betrayals are universal. The psychology of revelation lies in that exquisite moment when the performance cracks and the real face appears, raw, frightened, and desperately human. I recall the case of the false heir in the Scottish castle, a tragedy that parallels Ashford Hall in many ways. A distant cousin arrived, claiming relation to the deceased laird. He performed the role of grieving relative with technical perfection. Rough tweed jacket worn with country ease, his voice trembling with just the right emotion as he spoke of childhood memories, hands arranging flowers on the grave with apparent sincerity. The entire household accepted him. He even hosted a memorial dinner with fine wine and hothouse lilies, the scent of cigar smoke and leather filling the old hall. Yet he made one fatal error. He knew the combination of the hidden safe without ever being told. His hands moved with too much confidence when he thought no one watched. A true stranger would have hesitated or asked for guidance. The little grey cells noticed the discrepancy immediately. The psychology beneath the performance was greed disguised as devotion. Like Lord Cedric, the false heir had rehearsed every line in private, believing the mask would hold under scrutiny. But truth does not rehearse. The body knows the truth even when the face lies convincingly. The psychology of revelation is always the same across every theatre of crime. People believe their performance protects them, yet the unconscious mind betrays them in small, unguarded moments. A glance that lingers too long, a hand that remains too steady in shock, a detail known only to the guilty party. These are the moments when the mask slips. In Ashford Hall, the locked door and open window created a clever illusion of suicide, but the psychology of the actors revealed the truth. Greed forced Lord Cedric to eliminate the real heir first, then poison his uncle before the new will could be properly witnessed. The performance was magnificent in its planning, yet it crumbled because truth ultimately triumphs over even the most rehearsed lies. Why does truth ultimately triumph over performance? Because lies require constant energy and perfect memory, while truth needs only to exist. The actor grows tired of holding the mask in place. The fabric stretches and tears under the weight of guilt, fear, and ambition. Society may applaud polished performances for a time, but the little grey cells and justice see through the costumes eventually. In the end, every actor forgets their lines. The theatre of crime has one unchanging truth. The mask may hide the face for a while, but it can never change the heart beneath. Poirot sipped his tisane, the warm liquid comforting after the chill drama of Ashford Hall. He arranged the objects on the table into perfect symmetry once more, his small hands moving with familiar precision. The rain continued its gentle rhythm outside, a natural curtain falling on this particular performance, until the next theatre of crime, mes amis. Poirot watches always.